afternoon. My name is Jim Conlan from RCB Radio Sport West Clare, live at 92.5 and 94.8 FM and online at www.rcb.ie. As we continue our build-up now to the Senior and Intermediate Football Championships, as we look ahead now to the Intermediate first-round clash tie between Shannon Gaels and Liscannor, I'm delighted to be joined by one of the backroom staff of the Liscannor football intermediate management side, Michael McMahon. I suppose, Michael, if I can start off by talking a bit about last year for Liscannor. I suppose in terms of in the intermediate championship, I suppose you didn't really achieve your aims, but you finished in sort of style, rounding off the year with a thumping victory over Kilkee to send them on their way down to Junior A status. But I suppose a club like Liscannor with sort of lofty tradition and heights, I suppose you would have been aiming to try and get to out of the group stage and possibly as far as the semi-final. Would that have been a fair reflection on what the aims were in 2019?
Well, yes, that would be what the aim was. We played Kitfanora in the first round in Simon. It was a terrible bad day, pouring rain, and to be honest about it, things went against us on the day. One of our best players got sent off early on, very, very harshly, we thought, anyway. And we were beaten. We were down maybe 5 points at half-time, having played. We had very strong wins. But the lads showed great character in the second half, and we came back to it in a couple of points, and Kitfanora pulled away in the end. So we lost a couple of players that day with injuries, some of our main men. So our next day then we played with Tones, and really it was a tough, very tough game. We were up at half-time, 2 or 3 points up, and I'd say maybe our panel was a bit slack at that stage. We were missing 2 or 3 of our main players, and with Tones had a few players to bring on, and they just barely pipped us in the end. So that left us in a relegation battle, unfortunately. So we played Kilkee in the first round of it. It was on in Kilmehel. It was a very, very tough. We were actually 9 points down, I think, after 20 minutes.
Right. And
it was looking like definitely we were going to be in the relegation final. But the lads, in fairness to them, they battled back great. And at half time, we were only 3 points down. So we were confident enough then that we were on the way back. Second half was to and fro. There was nothing much in it. I think with maybe a minute to go, we were a point down, and we got free 60 yards out. And Alan Clahasy, as he has done for club and county many times over the years, kicked us straight over the bar. There wasn't too many other people in the county that was capable of doing it. So it went to a replay, and the replay actually finished as a draw again. Very, very tight. There was nothing between the teams, and we came out for extra time, and I don't know whether it was maybe we had a few younger legs, but in extra time we just ran riot, and we scored as much. We scored something like 4 goals and 5 points in about 10 minutes. So we actually won the game well for a finish, but there was nothing between us. I mean, Kilkee and Liscannor, sure, they battled many times over the years in senior. They were 2 of the top senior teams in the county for maybe 10 years, 12 years. But I suppose both teams have, came down. We're a small club. We're picking from a small pool of players. So you'll always get swings and roundabouts where you'll have years where you'll be very strong, and there'll be years then when the player pool mightn't be quite as good. But we have a very dedicated bunch of lads, and I'm very, very happy where we are at the minute now.
I suppose, Michael, in terms of you talk about the panel of the Liscannor, and some guys there with massive experience, QC Cup final victories, played in county finals as such. And I suppose you mentioned that pipeline of trying to bring on the 17, 18-year-olds and to try and integrate new blood to the team. And I suppose you did lose a few quality players down through the years, like Darren Nagel, who went overseas. And have you any sort of returning bodies for this year's championship? Is it like Darren, for example, coming back to you?
Darren won't be available this year, unfortunately. Hopefully next year, there's rumours he will be coming home. But no, he's a big loss because we're a small club and we really can't afford somebody like him missing. But sure, these things happen. Alan Canavan had been out injured with nearly almost 3 years with a knee injury, but he's back training with us, and he'll be fighting for a place in the panel or on the team. And we have a few other young lads. Like we have maybe out of maybe 10 of our panel might be 22 or under. So it's the perception of Liscannor might be that they're an older team. Well, we have a cohort of older players, but basically the panel, I'd say there is only 6 players over 30, we'd say, and then the rest of the panel is under 30. So the future is not looking bad at all. It was looking, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, things were looking a lot less rosy than what they're looking now, to be honest about it.
And Michael, in terms of the panel that you had last year, have you have anyone that sort of had any injury concern, or anyone that for job or work related that has called it a day? Or
not really, no. John Cairn was playing in goals last year. Unfortunately, he's working in Dublin. He hasn't really got the time to commit. So he's probably about the only one. I mean, we still have, we'll say, we have 3 players that played in the 2002 county final 18 years ago. Ronan Slattery, Alan Classy and Niall Conlan. And they're still playing. I mean, they're still playing as well as ever. Well, maybe they can't cover as much ground as they covered one time, but they're still playing exceptionally well. And I mean, it's great for a club to have the likes of those for the young players to kind of look up to. And I mean, they're super lads, and like they owe the club nothing, or they owe nobody nothing. So they still keep playing and they still keep topping out, and there's great credit due to them. And then, there's other players down along like Shane Canavan, Cohen Phillips, and we'll say there's a couple of more lads there in their mid-30s, and they have done unbelievable work for the club as well. So we can thank all them lads. One thing about the great thing about Liscannor, nobody really retires out of Liscannor too much. You don't. A 30-year-old doesn't hang up their boots unless there's something seriously wrong or something like that. So we've great commitment and a great club, and I'm really happy with where things are going now.
And I suppose that, Michael, in terms of, say, looking at the championship format, it's gone from a group round robin, and it's sort of real sort of championship knockout sort of format. And I suppose that for a club like Liscannor, you probably prefer that, having to rise yourselves for sort of one game. There's no fear, there's no threat of relegation, so all teams have a free sort of whisk. They can go out and sort of play football, and there's sort of a real sense of knockout sort of football. You can sort of size it up. If you win your first game, you're into a winner's round, and you're one game away from a semi-final. So you don't have that sort of group phase where you play the first day and you might be playing the second day and you out the third day, and there's a long sort of window gap. Do you think a club like Liscannor, the way that they're renowned playing sort of championship sort of football, that this sort of new format would sort of suit them, because they have to rise for one day and maybe again in the following sort of week, so you sort of know what route you have to take, basically?
Yes, I think it would suit us actually very well. I mean, training has gone very well. I suppose people were met. I mean, it was only really 3 weeks ago we started back, but lads have been doing a bit on their own. But it was hard for them because nobody really knew up to 6 weeks ago whether there would be football or not. So you couldn't really be training all year, to be fair to them. But most of them came back. Every one of them actually came back, and they're all in good shape. Maybe we could be a little bit fitter. But I mean, I think every team is in the same boat. I mean, on our day, we can beat anybody. Simple as that. We've been intermediate for a good few years. We've never taken a beating, very, very rarely. I mean, if you beat Liscannor, you'll know you were in the game. Simple as that. And on our day, it's usually we wouldn't be the highest scoring team in the world, but we don't concede too much either. So usually games are pretty tight. So it can go a point either way. And this new format, you could actually end up in the semi-final, if things went your way. If the draw maybe went your way and it was kind to you, you could finish up in the semi-final. And if you finish up in the semi-final, anything is possible, as you well know.
And I suppose that, Michael, in terms of your opposition now, Shannon Gaels, they have been going through a sort of rebuilding curve in the last few years, and they were heading on a downward trajectory. But then there were obviously last year or two, in 2018, probably 2 or 3 lads came through the sort of Clare minors, the likes of Tom Kelly, Jack Reedy, and it's given them new blood. They got the likes of Niall Ellis, who transferred from Killimer, and he came into the fray. And I suppose a good lot of those Shannon Gaels lads, maybe 5 or 6 of that team that will feature against you, would have been part of the Kilmehel team that won the Kilmehel Shannon Gaels amalgamation, that won the under 21A championship. So Shannon Gaels are probably rebuilding from the bottom up in terms of their youth, and I suppose that's going to be a test in terms of they're going to be while you're bringing an awful lot of experience and pedigree, some of these youngsters as well, they know an awful lot of success and being part of the county team while they're young, but some of these Shannon Gaels boys are talented.
Oh yeah, they're a very good team. We played them 2 years ago in the championship back in Quilty, and it was a tough game for most of the game now, but they ran out pretty comfortable winners for a finish. But in fact, I was surprised 2 years ago. I thought they were really going to be very close to winning an intermediate championship. And I think they're a team that's certainly on the up, and they must be close to winning. I mean, you have maybe Kildare or Corofin. I'd put the Gaels up there very close to those two as being the three teams that really would be fancy to win this intermediate championship. But on our day, we certainly won't be afraid of them. We've played them back in my day when I played back in the 90s and that. We played them, I'd say, the most often of any team. And it was very tight, maybe 4 wins each, maybe a draw here and there. So there was nothing ever between the clubs. At the minute, they're playing in a higher league division than us. So I think they will be warm favourites to win the match. But, we certainly will go out and give a good account of ourselves. I'd be very surprised if we don't. And I think there won't be actually very much in the game. I think it'll be very tight, and we're well capable of winning it.
Yeah, I suppose people have that perception that, like O'Curry's and Coolmean, that this will be, many people tip O'Curry's and Coolmean to be very tight. People tip this game to be very tight, and they said mostly about the Shannon Gaels and maybe Liscannor game, that'll probably be won and lost in terms of midfield. Both teams, Liscannor bring an awful lot of bulk and power and strength to the midfield, and Gaels rely an awful lot on Dara Bohannon to win sort of primary ball to set up their forward. So if Liscannor get on top of midfield and win the dirty ball and the breaking ball, obviously it'll go a long way for Liscannor to triumph, because they'll starve those talented young Gael forwards of primary possession.
Well, that's it, sure. I mean, I suppose in every game midfield is vital, and if you win possession, you really are in a very strong position. But if you lose midfield, really, it's very, very difficult to win a game. Jared Bohannon, he's a super footballer. Like he's a big, strong lad. Really, we have to come up with some idea to curb him. But he is a fine footballer, and they're pretty strong around the middle there. So, we'll be hoping. We have some good players out there too. And I think we'll at least break even there.
Yeah.
So if we can break even, if we can stop their forwards, I mean, our backs are very experienced, maybe their forwards, but our backs generally don't give too much away.
Yeah.
If they get their score, I think it'll be earned.
And I suppose, Michael, in terms of, let's say, you've been back probably 3 weeks, probably less than 3 weeks. I suppose in terms of some teams opted into the Garmin Cup, others didn't. How's it been like for Liscannor to source out games and challenge games? I was speaking to 1 or 2 intermediate sort clubs, and they said they found it difficult enough in terms of most of the senior clubs have been going outside the county looking for challenges and stuff like that. For intermediate opposition, has it been a much tougher sort of road to try and find challenge matches before championship for you guys?
Yeah, well, we've only played 1 challenge match. We played our neighbours in Estime. It would be their second team, but I mean, they had a lot of senior players, and they had, I'd say, at least 30 players there. In Estime they must have they must be the strongest team in the county player-wise, I'd say, between senior and junior. I mean, they just have an ocean of players. So we played them in a challenge game on last week, and we did fine. I think we beat them by a couple of points. It was a tight game, but there wasn't much in it. But it was a learning curve, and we would be hoping to get another challenge game before we play again. Challenge games, I suppose sometimes you learn a lot, and more times you don't, because some teams don't really go all out. But training has been going well. We have 18, 19 players most nights of training. Most of our panel are around. There's a few away to come down the weekend, but most of them are around, so we're lucky enough in that situation, So, as I said, training has been. I never saw the lads as eager before, because I suppose some years they'd be huge build-up, but this year it's short. So I mean, everyone, I think, after the lockdown and everything, everyone was just meant to get out and kick a ball and run around the pitch and that. So everyone, things have been going well now. I can't complain at all.
And I suppose, Michael, it's only right that I asked this question, because I asked it to Michael Cusick, and I got surprised with the answer in terms of how many dual players they had playing with Tubber. It sort of surprised me that 10 or 12. Do Liscannor have any sort of dual players playing with Boston or Tubber, or you have fully focused on the football?
No, not really. We have a few of the younger lads that are involved in Simon hurling, like in the panel, but we don't really have any dual players now. It's all concentrating on football. We don't have dual players now.
Yeah, and I suppose in terms of, you mentioned the route, and every team wants treating the first game like knockout sort of football, championship football, and it's the fastest way, it's the quickest way to, you win your first game, whoever you meet in the winners round, whoever you're drawn at that, if you're successful then you're into county semi-final, you're one of those three teams, you avoid a so-called three-way playoff, and obviously the losers, the Kildare and Corfin, will be in that three-way playoff as well. So if you lose your opening round game, you're going to have to beat either Kildare or Corfin to make a county semi-final. It looks that sort of way. So in terms of that, I suppose every team is treating this new system as a knockout. No one wants to take the backdoor route, and obviously if you had to take the backdoor route, there's a possibility that you'd be playing a game of a Friday night and a Monday night, and 2 games over the weekend. And as Liscannor are a sort of tight-knit, sort of bunch, they're a sort of panel sort of wise, that would be asking an awful lot for you, I suppose, to play 2 intense championship games. If you were to end up in that format of a Friday and a Monday night, you'd very much prefer to go route 1.
Oh, certainly, yeah. I think, it would be very tough on us now if we had to play 2 matches on 4 days, and then, so definitely if you don't win the first round, you are going to be struggling a bit. And intermediate championship is very hard. It's very hard to win. I remember Aero telling me back in the 90s when they were intermediate for about 7 or 8 years, they said it's nearly easier to win a senior championship than to win an intermediate. So even back when we had 4 or 5 inter-county players back in 2000, we still struggled and just barely won an intermediate championship. So it's a tough championship to win, and whoever wins it will certainly earn it. That's one thing for sure. But certainly the first round is the key round. If you can get over the first round in, and maybe hope that if the draw might be kind to you, there's no easy team there, but I suppose some teams will be tested a bit easier than others. So the draw would have a big bearing on it. I mean, obviously Kildare and Corfin, that was a huge draw in the first round. I mean, they would be probably the two favourites, I would imagine. So whoever loses that you'd still fancy would have a good chance of being back in a semi-final again. So really, first round is key, definitely.
On that note, Michael, thanks for taking the time to talk to us this evening. We wish you and everyone involved in Liscannor GA Football Club a very prosperous intermediate championship in 2020. Hopefully you'll achieve the targets that you set out to achieve as players, management, and a sort of proud footballing club with a rich tradition. Hopefully in a year where many people across Clare and Ireland have suffered many sort of tragedies, Don Stockton football, hopefully you look back on the 2020 championship with fond memories. And on that note, Michael, thanks for talking to us this evening, and we wish you and Liscannor all the best of luck.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.
Good afternoon. My name is Jim Conlan from RCB Radio Sport, live at 92.5 and 94.8 FM, and all across West Clare. We're now turning our attention to the Intermediate Championship as we look in preparation for the games. And one of the ties of the round is the meeting of Shannon Gaels versus Liscannor. I'm delighted to be joined a member of the Shannon Gaels management team, David O'Connell, to hear his perspective and to hear Shannon Gaels' viewpoint on the clash against Liscannor. I suppose, David, first of all, in terms of preparation for this sort of championship as such, I was speaking to Paul Mann beforehand, Erog, they had no game. I was speaking to Lisa Casey, they had 1 game in terms of the Gary Cup. Did you have any sort of league game, or did you have 1 round at all this year?
Yeah, just to clarify, I'm club secretary, so I'm not actually part of the management team. But we had we played Bearfield early on in the year. We played them down Lavashida. It was a fierce bad day. We managed to get the better of them just by a point. I suppose back then we were delighted with the results, and it looked good for what we set up nicely for the Gary Cup after getting promoted last year, and we were delighted with the results. Obviously, that was out the window when COVID-19 struck, so I suppose from a point of view of getting ready for championship now, with no league to form up, it's gone completely out the window. There hasn't been any, So it's definitely going to be a different championship for all clubs than we usually have. First of all, the weather is going to be good, there hasn't been a lot of preparation, as I said. Fitness probably won't be as good as it has been, you know. So I think it's going to be critical for all clubs involved in football championships across the country, really, to get good starts in games, because you don't want to be chasing the game late on, particularly if the tempo isn't as high late on and the fitness isn't there, you know. And also with results on the day, with extra time and penalties, etc., you know, it's going to be really, really just that players can just go out and just go for it. And with the added, I suppose, bonus in a way, and not having to worry about relegation, it frees up clubs a bit as well, just to have to go for matches on the day, you know, and try and build a bit of momentum.
Yeah, I suppose, David, for you this year, I suppose last year we saw an injection of new blood into Shannon Gaels, promising youngsters, county minors, Tomas Kelly, Jack Reedy coming through, the addition of Paddy O'Malley, Niall Ellis, and it sort of brought new life to Shannon Gaels' sort of challenge, and you were very competitive last year in terms of intermediate champion. It just goes to show you that getting that extra bit of squad depth, it can really stand you. But I presume it's very much the same squad as last year that you had. I presume there's no real additions this year. I know Matthew Reedy has another year to go before he's eligible.
Yeah. So yeah, you summed it up pretty well there, I suppose. Like as a club, we went through a bit of a bad patch there, you know, about 2015. We dropped down to intermediate, and the cup took us a couple of years to kind of. We had a lot of older players then who obviously had given a lot of time and a lot of commitment to the club, and a lot of those lads retired then, you know, after being relegated from senior championship, you know. So then I suppose it took us a while, it took us a couple of years, as you said, just to, I suppose, find our own level. Like, you know, we went down to Division 3, but delighted then there 2 years ago, 2018, we got to Division 3 semi-final, just missed out on promotion, and last year under Paddy and Eamon Keane, we managed to get back into the Division 3 final and back up to the Garry's Cup. So we're delighted that we've, I suppose, steady the shift there. And as we said, look, we have a few really good players, like as you said, Dara Bohannon, you know, Jack Reedy, Niall Ellis, Thomas Kelly, Dylan Kinney, you know, Vaughan Keane, you know, and the Lorigans as well. A bit of a mixture of youth and experience. So yeah, we're quite happy with where we are right now, you know. And again, I suppose winning the under 21A, you know, joined with Kilmehel last year as well, I suppose, you know, that was a really good day for the club. You know, it was 1999 we won our last under 21A championship, and that set a really good solid foundation for us for the 2000s. You know, to be really competitive at senior level and win 2 intermediate championships. So as you said, hopefully this is 20 years after winning our 21A championship in '99. We win it with Kilmehel in 2019. So that's given us a very strong platform, I suppose. And as we said, a couple of more players to come through next year, the likes of Matthew Reedy and Ian Maloney and Ty Kelly. You know, there's a couple of that coming through there who are really, you know, really committed. They've got good football ability. So we're happy that we're adding to the squad rather than taking away from it. And as we said, like Mikey O'Malley's come into the squad there as well. And there's a couple of, I suppose, 1 or 2 other lads have come in there just over the last couple of weeks because of COVID-19, you know, like a couple of lads went going to J1 and Stephen Pure there. He's an airline pilot actually at the moment, you know, so he's grounded. So look at he's back training with us. So we're getting good numbers of training, as you said. You know, the age profile has gone down maybe from the late 20s and early 30s down to the late teens and early 20s. You know, so we've a nice mixture there of you know, youth and experience. So we'd be hoping that we'd be in a good position in a couple of weeks' time for our first round.
Yeah, David, your opponents, Liscannor, are probably going through the phase that you went through. There was sort of a rebuilding. But this is really sort of knockout championship. And Liscannor are sort of a renowned sort of championship, one-off sort of team. And when they needed that big performance last year against Kilkee, when their lives were on, they produced it in buckets. So, you know, Liscannor are always a wary sort of opponent, because, you know, if Liscannor sort of click, they have the experience. There are players that can go to the well for that sort of one game. These boys have been in QC Cup finals early back in the early decade in 2010, being involved in a Jack sort of 80 final. So in a one-off game sort of situation, Liscannor are a very dangerous foe, especially the likes of Alan Clossley, players like that, county experience. So they're not a team to be taken for granted. If it was a group game or a group system where they had 2 or 3 games under the belt, it might be too much for them. But this is really suited up. This championship might suit sort of Liscannor, because it's a one-off sort of a game situation.
Absolutely. Like when I think of Liscannor, and you said it there, like they've been in 3 quarter-finals in the early part of the of this of the 2000s. Like, and they, as far as I remember, the 3 Cousy Cups there as well. Like, and they are really, when I think of Liscannor, I think of character. They've got great football ability, and as you said, their toughness. And you put their backs to the wall, they come out there and score 4-18 against Kilkee last year in a relegation semi-final. Like, any club who can do that has to be respected. And Shannon Gaels are absolutely in no position whatsoever to disrespect any club in the county, and not to talk about Liscannor. Like, we'd have our work cut out for us, and absolutely, I think there's a bit of a perception there. Liscannor, they may be going through a bit of instability, or they may be going through a little patch there. But as you said, going out and scoring 4-18 last year when you're back to the wall, like, and as you said, like, this championship is just different. The relegation is gone. There's nothing to fear, and teams just have to be ready. Like, you're going to have good weather. It depends on how clubs are just going to react to that 6 to 8 week lead time, coming into that championship match. And with the result on the day, extra time penalties, this is just going to suit one-off games, and teams just need to go out. And from a Shannon Gaels point of view, we know if we're not absolutely 100% on the day we play Liscannor, we're going to be staring down at the field. There's absolutely no doubt about that. So, like you talk about Liscannor there in the early 2000s, like when you saw the likes of Constantine or Blake or Flattery or McDonough in the team, you're in for a very tough day, and that has not changed, and I don't think it ever will. They're a great traditional club. They've got great character, as I said, and they're a proud club. So there's absolutely no way that we would be in any way taking Liscannor for granted, or any club. We definitely have our work cut out for us.
And I suppose, David, in terms of Shannon Gaels, you have an awful lot of youth, an awful lot of pace, especially up front. But in terms of encountering that, it's a sort of intriguing sort of matchup, because Liscannor will probably bring an awful lot of bulk, an awful lot of physique around the middle, especially on breaking ball. They have really, really big men around the middle of the field, especially around the half-hour line. So in terms of your younger lads, they're going to take some hits and take some duds in terms of winning a 50-50 ball. So that winning primary possession is going to be very key, because if you win primary possession, you can get it to your lively forwards. But to get that ball into forwards, you got to earn it on the ground, and to win that 50-50 ball. And Liscannor are sort of renowned at that, winning the dirty ball, winning the midfield ball, and they have big men around the middle. So the kick-out strategy is going to be crucial for ye, and I suppose a big bearing on the game as well.
Absolutely. Look, you have to set the platform. The bread and butter is your kickouts. Like, you talk here about scoring and working the ball into scoring positions, but if you haven't got a good kickout strategy and you're not retaining possession from, roughly about 70 to 80% of your own kickouts, you're putting your own full back line under massive pressure. So getting that kickout strategy right, and the days of just lording the ball down, for example, in Darragh Hannon, like, everyone knows those days are gone. Like, you have to have a very diverse kickout strategy. You have to be able to go short. You have to be able to go long. You have to have someone dropping in. You need to be giving yourself 3 or 4 different options for every single kickout, because if that goes wrong, you're in huge bother. Like, and if you get the ball out around the middle and you're targeting your big men around the middle, that's going to be, Liscannor or any club are going to cop onto that fairly quickly. Double up there, and as you said, like, the last thing we wanted to make a dogfight in around the middle of the field, because Liscannor, as I said, like, character, toughness, you said it yourself, they're great physical presence in around the middle of the field. If there's a 50-50 ball there to be won, Liscannor won't be found wanting. So absolutely, building that base from your kick-out strategy is going to be huge, and hopefully we'll be able to put something together in the next couple of weeks. The lads will be able to put something together. The 2 guys over the team at the moment, Michael Crane and Frank Kelly, I'm sure they'll be devising something there for us to build that base.
Yeah, and I suppose, David, lastly, I suppose, in terms of that, you are Shannon Gaels treating as a knockout game, presumably Liscannor treating as well. And for the loser, it's a long pass to get back into the semi-final. If you win, there's a carrot of the next game. You win that, you're one of the 3 teams in the semi-final. You can have a look and you can see the 4th opponent. You can see that 3-way playoff. You can get an idea as such. If you lose that opening round tie, you go into loser system, and not only have you to win that game, but you have to win 2 other games, possibly in the same day, in a three-way playoff. So listen, I suppose for Shannon Gaels as well, very much it's the front door route. You want to go through the semi-final route, and if the back door possibly you're not looking as an option, but if it did come to that, it's a very sort of long route for the losers to get back into a county semi-final if they lose the opening round.
Absolutely, you know, like I suppose if you win 2 games, you're in the semi-final, and that's as you said, is the direct route, you know. So if you win your first round, if you win your second round in, it's basically 3 from 6 into the semi-final. If you lose your first round in, it's 1 from 6, and you know what? That's a complete lottery, and I don't think anyone wants to go down that road. You know, and as well as that, you're going to have some really good teams. You're going to have either one of Kildare or Corofin, and the 2 of them have to be the picks there to be favourites of whoever comes out of that game. You know, are going to be really, really strong and have a lot of momentum built up. Whoever doesn't come out of that game are then going to be in the loser section, and you don't want to be staring down at the barrel of either playing either a Kildare or Corofin in a losers round where everything is on the line. You know, and one mistake then is going to knock you out of the championship. So you're right. The direct route, you know, there is a back door for round 1 losers, but you know the direct route is the shortest route. You could win 2-3 games there very quickly and you'll be a county final. You don't want to go in the back door and you're just fighting for survival. And it brings a lot of pressure on players as well. You just don't know how things are going to go. And as you said, playing a playoff match in the space of a couple of days, you know, you pick up 1 or 2 injuries and then you're in a very tough game. You're heading into the semi-final. Possibly if you manage to get there through that losers group with a couple of injuries, and you know, it's just not the way to go. So, you know, front door, you have to be ready for that first game. You have to be ready when that ball throws in. As I said, the fitness probably won't be there for the 60 minutes because the league wasn't there. So lads are going to have 5 or 6 weeks just to get their act together. And hopefully we can hit the ground running on that day against Liscannor.
And you mentioned injuries there and fitness, and you had a guy last year who was a big player for you, a former Clare underage player. He was out injured, Michael O'Donoghue. Is there any chance we're going to see, and I know Owen Meany, you're flying him back for London, is there any chance we're going to see Owen and Michael in this year's championship?
You're probably not. No, look, we've been in discussions with Owen, and obviously with the COVID-19 restrictions ongoing at the moment, it looks like Owen won't be available. That's the latest information we have at the moment. As regards Michael O'Donoghue, he's still he's making great progress now. You know, he'll be. I wouldn't expect that he'll be in time enough that he'll make enough progress now this year in 2020 to make it back for the championship. But I hope to see Owen and Michael back in the jersey in 2021.
David O'Connell, thanks for your time. We wish you and Shannon Gaels all the best in the upcoming intermediate championship. We hope it's a prosperous campaign for you and for everyone involved in Shannon Gaels, and you get what you want out of the 2020 championship. Thanks, David, and best of luck to Shannon Gaels.
Thanks very much. Cheers.